So, working with unhelpful beliefs about self and others. So, everyone, no matter how evolved we might be, has automatic thoughts that just pop into our heads without us even realizing that they're there. And these can be either positive thoughts that bring on positive feelings, like, I can't wait for today. This lecture is going to be great. And so obviously feel excited and positive. Or you might have a neutral thought like, I'll go and buy some bread this morning, or I'll make my cup of tea now. And you might not have too much of a feeling around that because it's more of a neutral thought. Then you might have a negative thought pop into your head. Today is going to be a disaster. My internet's going to drop out. My counselling video isn't going to work. Everyone's going to laugh at me. Today's going to be a disaster. So naturally, if you're having that kind of thought, you're going to be feeling maybe dejected, anxious, a feeling of impending doom, maybe hopeless as well. So you can see how the way we think can very much influence the way we feel. And there's been lots of studies that show that looking at the way we think and helping to become aware of the way we think, but also question it, can help with a wide range of different distressing emotional problems. So that's what an automatic thought is. It's an automatic thought that just pops into your head and tends to bring on some kind of feeling reaction. So why would a person-centered counsellor work with a client's thoughts? Well, that is a very good question. It was Albert Ellis that first introduced the idea of challenge, or that some thoughts can be self-destructive or unhelpful, and that we could maybe challenge some of these thoughts. And some of you who have been doing the theoretical approaches course would know that that looking at people's thought patterns and learning how to dispute these thought patterns is a central feature to CBT, which is a really widely used approach within counselling and psychology. But what we're going to be talking about today isn't about becoming a CBT therapist or necessarily, using strictly CBT with a client. We're looking at useful tools that might be worthwhile having in your toolbox to work with clients as issues come up, or as maybe unhelpful beliefs or thinking might surface, and you think maybe we should address this. And so, it very much has a place within person-centered counselling, because we also know that in order for change to occur in the long term, we can't just look at the way people feel or the way people behave. We have to look at all three. We have to look at the way they're thinking, the way they're feeling, and the way they're behaving in order for long-term change to occur. So this is a way of helping to look at the way people are thinking. It's not the only way, but it's a useful, a very kind of simple, it's a collection of very simple tools that we can use in counselling. However, people sometimes hold beliefs that to us may seem really unhelpful. But we need to make sure that it's the person's choice in terms of disputing or changing the way they're thinking. So we need to be working with people where they're at the moment, and whether they're willing to look at some of these thoughts that they're having that might be a bit unrealistic or a bit unhelpful or a bit distressing. Sometimes the way people are thinking or the way they believe kind of fits for them, and it's working for them, and they have no issue with it, in which case it's not our role to convince that person they need to change the way that they're thinking. But sometimes they hold beliefs about life or about themselves, about other people that they've had all their lives, and it doesn't sit right for them now. It causes them some distress, and yet they still hold on to these beliefs. And in those cases, it's really useful to work with clients on those beliefs and what ways that they can respond to those thoughts and beliefs. But we need to be really gentle about that. So we need to make sure that it's being led by the client, and that they're making a choice around it. And it's important that you don't tell a client that they're being irrational, because we all like to think that we're rational. And so it's about gently introducing the idea of maybe there's another way of thinking about this. So 3 important things about challenging negative thoughts. Well, there's lots of important things, but these are the things that I feel are the most important. Thoughts are not feelings. So I think often clients get confused about this. They can't quite separate what a feeling is and what a thought is. So when someone says, I'm feeling nervous, that is an emotion. So they're feeling a bit of anxiety. When someone says, I feel like a failure, this is a thought. So there's a thought that is attached to that feeling that they're trying to describe. So usually that thought might be around, I'm never going to be able to do this, or I shouldn't have messed up, or I never get anything right, which can lead to feelings of hopelessness, or feeling discouraged, or feeling nervous or sad or depressed, or whatever it is. So it's important to be able to unpack what is a feeling, and if they're trying to describe a feeling, trying to nut out what the thought is that leads to that feeling. So what are they thinking before they start to feel that way? What are they telling themselves? And often helping a client uncover what they're telling themselves can help them get a little bit of distance from a really strong, distressing feeling that they're having, such as feeling hopeless. So they can see that they're telling themselves that they're a failure, or that they're never going to get anything right, and they can get just a little bit of distance and see that that is a thinking process or thinking pattern that's maybe not that helpful for them. And the more distance a client can get from some of these unhelpful thoughts, the better. So you probably are all pretty aware of this, I'd say. But in the general public, and social media and so on, it's really, really common to see, what are they called? Kind of sayings and, banners of, think positively, smile, be happy. It's really unhelpful to tell someone to think positively when they're feeling down, or when they're feeling anxious, or when they're feeling, any other distressing feeling. Because if it was that easy, if they could just say, right, today I'm going to be positive, today I'm going to think positively, and I'm not going to feel any anxiety, and I'm just going to go about my daily business without feeling anything that I don't want to feel, people would do it, because people don't want to feel bad. So it tends to create a feeling of shame that, people are telling you to think positively and you just can't. So it tends to make things worse. It's much more helpful to help someone identify their thinking patterns that lead to them feeling the way that they do, to gently help them test out these thoughts and beliefs, so they have less of a hold on them. But you'll find that kind of attitude everywhere you go. Just think positively. Just don't think about it, and everything will be fine. Well, if only that was quite so simple. So another thing is that this myth or this idea that if we help work with someone on their thoughts or their beliefs, it will change their lives. When sometimes people's circumstances aren't going to change, the things around them, like perhaps they're facing a difficult relationship, or their living arrangements are not good, or they're unemployed, or whatever. So thinking, working on someone's, the way that someone's talking to themselves and believe their beliefs isn't necessarily going to change their reality, but it may change how they cope with the circumstances that they're facing. And we do this with helping people develop some coping statements, which is really very different to helping people have, oh, what happened to me? It's really, it's different to giving someone a list of positive affirmations. Positive affirmations, there's been some research that suggests that they can make people feel worse. And that's often because, for example, someone who has body image issues might be given a statement, "I am beautiful inside and out." And they don't believe that. And having an affirmation statement that's so different to the way you see your reality can highlight the discrepancy between how you're feeling and the affirmation. So hopefully that I've explained that well enough for you, that affirmations tend to exacerbate some people's distress. Not always, but they sometimes do. Whereas working with coping statements is a little bit different. So it's more rooted in reality and looking at how you've coped with something before and what's likely to happen and those kinds of things, rather than kind of blanket statements about, your you being lovable, or you being intelligent or successful, or any of those kinds of things that you may or may not feel. Right. So we all have a set of rules that we tend to live our life by. And these tend to come from particularly our parents or primary caregivers, teachers, maybe friends around us when we were growing up, or siblings, and sometimes religious or church backgrounds. And oftentimes these rules will work for people in that, sometimes it's, I must always do unto others as I would do to myself. So, that might work for someone, but there's other rules that cause people distress or that don't sit right with them now that they've grown up and they're leading an independent life. So sometimes these shoulds, musts, oughts, and have to beliefs can lead to a person feeling they've got no control over their life. So I must always please other people. So you end up, always working to make sure that you get other people's approval, which ends up being exhausting and ultimately a failure. I must never make mistakes. So, you know, either you don't do anything at all, so maybe you procrastinate studying, for example, before an exam or something like that, or you write an essay the night before. Never done that. Or you over prepare, or, you know, spend far too long on one piece of work. So you can see how these beliefs can tie us into a set of behaviours that are not all that helpful. So it can also lead to a feeling of guilt if you don't follow those beliefs, such as I must always please other people. So if you actually do put yourself first, you feel incredibly guilty. If you say no to someone, you feel very guilty. It may not be relevant to the client's life anymore. So maybe they don't need their parents' approval anymore to feel okay, but they're continuing to follow this rule without really questioning whether it's still working for them. However, it might still be relevant for them. So, for example, you know, people from a collectivist culture may hold very strong views about the importance of putting the group before the individual, and it's really important to be respectful of the differences, the cultural differences, and not challenge these beliefs without a good understanding or an openness to understanding why people believe that. So when it comes to working with someone on a belief, you know, it's good to ask them, does it sit comfortably with them? Is it working for them? Is it realistic even for them? And if not, maybe it's time to review it. Maybe their life has changed. Maybe they have changed. Maybe they're in a different situation now. So they need to review maybe some of these long-held beliefs. So I've asked you to look at in your journal, what shoulds do you live by, and where do they come from? So you know, have a think about this list here. This is just a brief list, but there's so many others. So I should be the perfect friend, partner, or student. I should always protect my friends so they never feel hurt. So I should never hurt someone's feelings. I should be able to endure any hardship without distress or complaint. I shouldn't need to ask for help. I should be able to find a quick solution to every problem. I should never feel hurt, sad, or anxious. I should always be happy. I should always control my feelings. I must be liked by everyone. I should never make mistakes. I should be totally self-reliant. I should never hurt or disappoint anybody. So you can see that some of these beliefs may have been useful for people in the past. So maybe that belief around I should be totally self-reliant, maybe that was very useful. So maybe the person didn't have other people around them to rely on. Maybe when they did ask for help, that help wasn't forthcoming, and so they had to rely on themselves. But maybe now things are a little bit different. Maybe there's people around them they could ask for help. Maybe I should always control my feelings. So maybe they were told that by somebody or someone significant, and that's the way that they believe that they should handle themselves. And maybe now now they have more understanding of their feelings, and they're surrounded by people who are more accepting of the way they feel. So maybe that can be questioned. So it's important to realise that these beliefs develop for good reasons quite often, in a way to adapt to the challenges in our life, and also to fit in with the way people around us think and believe. So other directed beliefs can also create a lot of heartache and distress. So often people hold unrealistic beliefs about others or the world. And I've had, quite a few clients who have really struggled with this idea that that people should be a certain way, or people shouldn't do certain things, or life should be fair, or those kind of things. And people can get really bound up with these beliefs, and it can create a lot of anger, a lot of grief, a lot of sadness, a lot of distress. So it's really useful to help the client tease out some of these beliefs and have a look at whether they're realistic or not. Again, it's important to be really gentle with that too. So often it comes from the way we were brought up, but not always. Sometimes it's our experiences that change the way we look at things. Particularly, if you look at someone who's been through trauma, often their beliefs about life and the safety and the predictability of life changes after they've been through a traumatic event. So sometimes it's helpful to see these beliefs as preferences. So as someone who believes that life should always be fair. Now, we know that life is not always fair and just. It just isn't. It's neither unfair or fair. It's neither. So a good way to work with this one is to try to say, while it's preferable that life is always fair, so that's an acknowledgement that that's what the client would like, life is not always fair and just. So sometimes clients aren't aware of these beliefs. They're more automatic. They're not aware of how much these beliefs are having an impact on the way they feel. So it can be really useful to help them tease these out. So whether these beliefs are in relation to the client themselves, so I must always do this, I must always do that, or whether they're in relation to the way other people should be, they're restricting the way people live. And so one of the challenges as a counsellor is to help people try and relax the rules that they live by sometimes if they're not working for them anymore. So, again, replacing it should be this or it should be that with it would be nice. So I like that picture of the different shoes, because in my house we can never find matching socks. And so while it would be nice to wear matching socks every day, it's more realistic to consider that maybe if they're in the same family of colour, then they'll go together. Yeah, so that's my idea of relaxing the rules that I live by. Waiters should always get my order correct. Now, if you imagine that, if you think about that, and then a waiter makes a mistake, what are you going to feel? You're going to feel furious, because waiters should always get my order correct. So a little bit of manipulation of that would be, while it'd be preferable to get the correct order every time, sometimes mistakes happen. So it's about relaxing those rules that we're living by. So these are some more alternatives. I must never make mistakes. Well, the only way to not make mistakes, is to do nothing. All people make mistakes and learn from them. I must get my own way or be right. So this is really useful for people who are very argumentative or have difficulty listening to people. I don't need to get my own way to feel okay, and I can sometimes get satisfaction out of letting other people have their own way or be right. I need other people's approval to feel okay. It's nice to get other people's approval, but I don't need it to feel okay. So you can see one of the elements of making a more useful or more helpful statement is to actually acknowledge what someone wants. So it's nice to get others' approval, that's true, but it's not absolutely necessary to feel okay. So here's some other examples of other directed shoulds. So that driver shouldn't cut in front of me in line. That's a classic road rage thought. So, you know, maybe you've got a client who says, oh, I was just driving along and all of a sudden, you know, this driver cut in front of me and I just saw red. I got furious. Well, there's a link in between that, and that's the thought of that driver shouldn't cut in front of me in line. So a should is usually the link between something that happens on the road and a very angry reaction. People should be more tolerant. People shouldn't be so stupid. My students should do their homework, or my clients should do their exercises or their homework. The world should be fair at all times. Relationships should not be difficult. So see how you go with turning these into, while it is preferable that blah, 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 try and turn it into a more helpful statement. So here, like I spoke about before, coping statements. Here's an example of coming up with some coping statements. And this is around a student who's approaching doing a test. So their thoughts are, I'm going to fail, I probably won't get an A, but maybe I'll do okay. I'm not prepared at all. Next time, I'll try to be more organised and start studying earlier. Why didn't I study more? Given how much I had on my plate, I studied as much as I could. I had to choose between sleeping and studying, and I chose sleeping. That's an okay choice to make, even if it means I'm less prepared. My teacher is going to think I'm a slacker. I can go talk to my teacher about the test. So these coping statements help the client actually recognize what they're worried about and come up with an action plan or a way to deal with it that is less scary and less overwhelming. And unhelpful thinking style. So this is a really useful tool, and this is on Blackboard. If you can have a look at the readings and links folder. So these are a series of ways that people think, and that can cause lots of different emotional reactions like anxiety, depression, and that kind of thing, or low self-esteem. So, you know, all or nothing thinking. So sometimes you might have noticed that you do this after a counselling session. In the triads, so maybe you think, oh, I made that one mistake and therefore the whole session was no good. Yeah, so it's either all good or all bad. Yeah. So mental filter, so only paying attention to our failures and not seeing our successes. That's a really common one as well. Where we look at evidence that people don't like us and ignore the evidence that people think that we're pretty great. Disqualifying the positive. So, you know, you get a good mark for a test or for an essay, and you say, oh, that doesn't count. I mean, I just got lucky. Or maybe, you know, maybe I just jinxed fluked it. Magnification or catastrophizing, so blowing things out of proportion. Emotional reasoning, so, you know, assuming that because we feel a certain way, it must be true. So because we feel stupid, it must be true that we must be stupid. Or because we feel ugly, we must be ugly. Labeling, so applying a label to ourselves or to other people. I'm useless. I'm a loser. I'm an idiot, those kinds of things. And that serves to stigmatize ourselves and other people and create negative feelings, obviously. Personalization, so maybe, you know, looking at something and assuming that it's got something to do with you or something you've done. So maybe your housemate is really grumpy this morning and you think, oh gosh, what have I done? Didn't I clean up the kitchen well enough? When it might be that she's just got an assignment back and got a low mark. Yeah, so you're automatically assuming that people's response to you or the way they're appearing is your fault. And shoulding and musting we've gone through. Okay. So have a look at each individual sheet that I've put on Blackboard for you. And you can hand these out to clients and work through them. These are really useful to get clients to think about, you know, the ways they're thinking, and you know, often clients will have one or two unhelpful thinking styles that they use quite often. So maybe they jump to conclusions all the time. They think they know what's going to happen, but they don't know. Or they mind read, so they think they know what others are thinking, but they don't. And you know, that can help. Just helping someone identify their thinking patterns can really get them towards change and feeling better in itself, even if you don't get to that disputation stage or looking at alternative ways of thinking. Just being able to identify your thinking patterns can really help. And then I've got each individual unhelpful thinking style up there on Blackboard as well. So, oops, I should have meant to take that out. So asking useful questions. Is there another way of looking at this? What's the worst that could happen? And if the worst happened, how would you live through it? What could I do to cope if this is really the case? What's the best that could happen? What's the most realistic outcome? What is the unhelpful thinking style? So get them to identify which one it is. And if a friend were in this situation, had this thought, what would I tell her? That's a really useful tool to use to get people to think about, well, if a friend was in this situation, would you say you're a loser? Or would you say you never get anything right? Or would you say you must always please everyone? And clients will, you know, always say, of course not. No, I mean, now you mention it, no, I would say it's okay to make mistakes, or, you know, it's sometimes okay to put yourself first, or, you know, that kind of thing. So getting them to actually think outside of themselves can really help them get some balance in the way that they're thinking about it. So this is kind of a little, I guess, thought diary or disputation diary, where someone thinks about something they've been worried about, identify the thought they've been having, and the style that might be influencing that thought. Ask yourself the useful questions and then come up with a more helpful thought. And then the Centre for Clinical Interventions website is really useful. There's so much stuff on there about pretty much everything. And it's not just CBT based, there's also acceptance and commitment therapy stuff and mindfulness resources. Yeah, it's just really good resource for you. So have a look at that, and I shall see some of you